Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Trainee Hub. My name is Priscilla Medeiros. I'm the Knowledge Mobilization and Community Engagement Specialist at the Edwin S.H. Leong Center for Healthy Children. Today's event is hosted in collaboration with the University of British Columbia's Edwin S.H. Leong Center for Healthy Aging. And it's my pleasure to be co-moderating this session with their research director, Kim Schmidt. So first and foremost, I'd like to acknowledge that we at the U of T Edwin S.H. Leong Center for Healthy Children are located on the traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, Seneca, and Mississaugas of the Credit. We recognize and honor the Indigenous peoples who have cared for the land for thousands of years, and today this land remains a vibrant meeting place for many Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. And from coast to coast, I acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this land home. So today we're taking a slightly different approach to our Trainee Hub webinar. Instead of having individual presentations from each panelist followed by a structured Q&A, we'll actually be hosting a moderated conversation for the first 30 minutes that I'll be leading. And then we'll be opening it up to questions from the audience and continuing to moderate a question period that we've co-created as a group for today's session. And why we chose this format is because we really wanted to create an interactive space for you, one that allows the panelists to build on each other's insights and to share a range of perspectives on today's topic. And during the conversation, as you would have seen from the promotional materials, our panelists are going to share some practical strategies for building trust and fostering and creating that reciprocal relationship and value lived experience as really being an expertise. So just to kind of add a little bit of context to this in terms of the moderated second half portion, you'll be welcome to raise your virtual hands at that point, as well as add your questions into the chat. We just ask that as you're adding questions to the chat, you place a capital Q at the beginning of your message so that we can easily spot it and make sure that it doesn't get missed. That way we can bring that into our conversation when the time comes with our panelists at that open portion period. So at this time, I'm going to welcome our three panelists. First, we're joined by Lily Wong. Lily Wong is an older adult research partner at the Innovation in Dementia and Aging Lab at the University of British Columbia. And inspired by personal experiences with dementia, she's contributed to many, many projects, which you'll have the opportunity to hear about some of them today, including studies using music to support patient engagement in hospitals. We're also joined by Francine Buchanan, who's a senior manager of patient, family, and community engagement at the Hospital for Sick Children, as well as a project investigator at the Research Institute and an associate professor at the IHPME at the University of Toronto. And she works very hard to embed patient, family, and community voices into child health research, ensuring that lived experiences are driving meaningful change. And lastly, we're enjoyed by our third panelist, Veena Mahabir, who has lived experience with chronic pain since adolescence and recently overcame stage 3 breast cancer. And as a graduate student of SickKids Chronic Pain Clinic, she's an active member of the Family Advisory Network and the Research Family Advisory Council. So we have a great breadth of experience here today joining us for this conversation. So I'm going to launch into some of our questions that we've pre-prepared to give you a better sense in terms of who we're being joined by as leading panelists. So the question I'm throwing out to our panelists to get to know them a little bit more is, can you tell us, those on the call today, a little bit more about yourselves and how your own experiences have led you to become involved in research? And perhaps the first person I'll ask to answer this question is Veena.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being in community with us today. As Priscilla mentioned, my name is Veena, and I use she and her pronouns. So my into research, and I really appreciate the way you phrased this question in the sense that you my path is really quite a winding road, a journey into research in the first place. It really started as an adolescent right here at SickKids. And in that experience, navigating chronic pain, medical racism, and trauma as an adolescent was really, really challenging. And I often found the voices of youth and adolescents were not heard. I went into rooms where often felt like I didn't belong at a pediatric hospital. And really, that's where my journey started as a discontent adolescent sitting in a waiting room thinking this should really be better. And having supportive health professionals and researchers who said, you know what, Vina, your voice matters. Your voice, and not only that, but the stories that I brought with me of my Indo-Caribbean ancestors who survived indentureship, displacement, and colonial violence. The same ancestors who also taught me my resilience, taught me about community care and the importance of honoring knowledge that lives outside of our institutions today. Those lineages and my own lived experience, and being an uninvited settler on Turtle Island really shaped my commitment to creating research spaces where people feel cared for, safe, and treated with dignity and respect. Being invited into research now as a PhD student, I just finished or actually, I'm in progress of my second year at the Institute for Health Policy Management and Evaluation. It's been really important to integrate that with my lived experience. And I've been so lucky to have mentors ahead of me who have done this, people like Francine, who've opened the door for folks like me to even be considered as this full person, as a researcher and as a person with lived experience together. So really this process of becoming a research advocate showed me that my story, my identities, and my community's history, her story, their stories all had value in shaping the systems that we are trying to actively decolonize. And that's what opened my door to my thesis, really focusing on developing stigma reduction intervention for racialized adolescents living with sickle cell. So that's a little bit about me and how I landed here. Thank you so much for the question, Priscilla.
Of course, Vina, and it's absolutely incredible that, we have the opportunity to work closely together as you're a funded scholar at the Leong Center. So certainly more to come in terms of learning more about your lived experience and, of course, your new work on sickle cell disease. I think next I'm going to pass this question off to Lily. Lily, can you share a little bit more about who you are and how your own experiences led you to be involved in research?
Yes, I used to work with the older adult with dementia for the last 25 years, and I tried to quit several times, and they keep calling me back. It's mainly because of my language skill, because lots of older folks from China, they don't speak English, so I interpret for them. And that kind of lead to I search out other way to help the community. So I involved with the Silent Disco Project, which they produce music and individual wear the headset and they could follow the music. And when I see them very inspired and from wheelchair actually get up to dance, I was very impressed. So that lead me to another project and keep on for the last 8 years. I've been involved with more than 16 projects. And I really enjoy working with the young ones. The, the students, they're maybe a quarter of my age, and they're all very good and they learn how to deal with older folks. So they learn how to talk to us. And that's how I feel that I could bring something to the projects.
That's incredible, Lily. And I know later on we've, created some really depth type questions where you get to share a bit more about these projects you've been involved with. But I know preparing for today's session, you and I shared some laughs about your experiences with research and on these projects. And I know you'll be able to share some of that with the audience today. Um, and of course, the last panelist to share a little bit about her incredible work is Francine.
Thanks, Priscilla. So my connection to research or how I got involved is about 12 years ago. My son was born at SickKids with uh, multiple birth defects and a rare condition and very premature. He subsequently spent almost 2 years in the ICUs of SickKids. During that time, I was a management consultant and working by his bedside, but realized that I had a lot of questions that were being raised that I thought I could have some help in answering. So I applied to do my PhD because I thought I needed to talk like a clinician. I needed to talk like a doctor. I needed to have the language. I needed to have the methodologies. So I embarked on that journey, but a funny thing happened. My son was discharged from hospital with a ventilator, oxygen tank, feeding pump, medical wheelchair. And because I didn't have anyone that could care for him at home and there were no daycares that were accepting him, I brought my child with me to IHPME in the halls of U of T. And while I was standing next to my son, before I would pop into class while his nurse cared for him outside the classroom, fellow students would come up to me and they hadn't seen, as I like to say, a patient in the wild. They saw patients in clinic, but they rarely saw their patients outside of the hospital walls. And they started to ask me questions, not medical questions, not really in depth, but just curiosity, conversational type questions. And it was through those conversations that I would learn about their research. And I would learn about questions that they had that they didn't know how they would answer that weren't research questions. They were more like, how do I design this research? How do I make this so that it matters to you? Does this question even matter to someone who's trying to navigate Wheel-Trans on the way to get home from class? And it was through that that I got involved with patient engagement and realizing that my voice had a real niche on how it could answer these questions. It wasn't necessarily in those research methods I was learning in class, but it was formulating those research methods. And I eventually finished my PhD in shared decision making for parents of children with medical complexity, which is still my passion, but realized that elevating the voice of patients and families was something that I was really, really keen to do because I saw how much it could affect the research that we're doing and the quality of the research that we're doing. And that's what led me to my career now in terms of supporting and elevating the patient voice. But I make sure on a daily that I'm involved on the other side of the table as well. I put myself in the position as a family advisor at other hospitals or advocacy groups or patient groups where I can remind myself what it feels like to be on the other side of the table, but also really think about how I can elevate my voice, make my voice stronger, and support others that are doing the same thing. So that's my history into this space.
Thanks so much, Francine. And all three responses lend itself really nicely to some recent conversations, and I believe conversations the three of you have also had with folks who are interested in entering the space of engagement and research is not just where to find people, but how to really communicate what you're trying to do to pique the interest of someone with lived experience like yourselves to be part of a research process or project. So, thinking back to your early days of being part of research projects, what made you want to be part of a project to get some of these trainees and researchers on the call thinking a bit more critically about their approach? And what was that first experience like for you? Um, Maybe I'll start with Lily. Lily, would you like to speak a little bit about that experience?
Okay. My first project was the silent disco project, which involved with a headset, and we uh, went around to hospital inpatients, older adult ward with dementia patient, and they could follow the music. Like music is a language, I guess everybody kind of follow with it. They tap their feet, tap their move their head and a body, so they respond really well. And we find that music was really can inspire the older folks much more than just talking to them. So we went to nursing homes. We did the same, and everybody just keep dancing away. And that's really that was my first project, and it kept me very interested. And I went on to other projects, like the robot project, which during COVID we used that to talk to people in nursing home because they couldn't have visitors, and then uh, we can carry on a conversation with them within the home that they live in. And one of the person just lost her husband, and when I saw a picture in her room, and then she said that was where she was come from. So she's from there she started talking and really was, instead of being very quiet and depressed, she started talking and really live it up. She didn't even want to go to lunch. And the
That's
next person I talked to was a man. He just gone into the nursing home, and he was the CEO of his own company. So he was very upset about being locked in or locked down. So, and I asked his interest. He said he would like do cooking. So I kind of it, advised him to maybe ask for a program that he could demonstrate his cooking, which he was going to try. And then I talked to the worker later, and they did have some classes for him. So I was very happy for him.
That's great, Lily. You certainly gravitate towards projects that are really centered on forming connections with people and finding ways of helping them open up to then share more about their lived experiences as it relates to the topic of projects you're involved with, music being a good example of that. And I think that highlights for you specifically why you may have wanted to be a part of projects at the beginning, but you've continued to gravitate towards those sorts of projects in your career path as well. Maybe I'll ask Francine to chime in next about your kind of first experience wearing that patient parent hat.
Yeah, one of my early experiences is actually a study that is still ongoing today as we get to information out there and disseminated. But it was a study about the experiences of patients and parents in the ICU. And since I had spent so much time next to my son in the ICU, it was really important for me to be able to shape the project a little bit about things that you might not expect about patients and parents in the ICU. And a research team brought me in, treated me like a member of the team, sat down with me in project meetings, explained decisions around why they were choosing a certain methodology over another, questions about what the survey questions were like or research questions were like. And what made me really feel like part of the team was seeing my input put into practice. So, for example, in this study, they figured out a way to video record patients who are nonverbal with their parents being verbal, but you could see how expressive they were in their conversations. You could see that it wasn't just a parent talking for their kid, it was the kid talking, and it was visible because it was being recorded. You could see that we moved away a little bit from this survey interview qualitative methodology into a real participatory experience-based co-design type methodology, which really lent well to these experiences that you want to share about the ICU that might not come across in a interview as directed through qualitative like interview questions. The work was really meaningful to me. It aligned with my experience. They weren't just plucking me out of the blue because I was an available advisor. They really sought out someone who could talk to that lived experience. Um, and then seeing that, I could say sometimes we're just bored and we want to talk to someone. So don't be afraid to come to us. Sometimes we are in a stressful situation, but doesn't mean that the next day that we won't want to talk to you. Those sorts of insights were assumptions that were made that weren't really clarified, and having some of those clarification questions was really meaningful to me, but it was being part of the team, being visible to the discussions where it's like, we don't all know the methodology we don't want to use. We don't, as researchers, know exactly the right questions to ask. It's all a discussion, a negotiation, perspectives coming together to make that final decision. And being able to see that built my confidence that my voice mattered, built my confidence that my voice was on par for that specific lived experience that I had with someone that might have a specific methodological experience, biostatistician experience, grant writing experience. And allowing people into that little world where they can see it allows them to understand a little better how to contribute, what to contribute, and builds their confidence.
That was great feedback. And Vina, I saw you nodding your head throughout Francine's response. I wanted to give you the floor so that you similarly could share a little bit about your kind of first experience in the field working in research as a patient partner and, what it felt like to be a part of a team and what makes it so memorable.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Priscilla. And thanks, Lily and Francine, for sharing your experiences. I think I've heard from both of you things that really made me feel a part of the team. It's really interesting how that holds across a lot of patient partners that you speak to, or people with lived experience, or community partners, however they choose to describe themselves, citizen researchers as well. But for me, I think my earliest experience was, when being brought into a room and not being asked, a specific research question or to do a survey. It was really just to advise and learn about my research priorities, what I thought was important as a young adolescent newly diagnosed with the condition. And I was very lucky that those folks that I engaged with were people who saw me as a full person beyond just that diagnosis. And as someone living with lots of diagnoses, it's really important on that team to be seen as more than just that, and see, the fact that we bring with us our entire backpack of experiences. It's not just our experiences, sitting there in clinic. It's also about how we navigate society every day. For me, especially identifying as a disabled person, what that is like navigating a society that is not built for me and oftentimes doesn't accommodate for folks like me. This has actually led to kind of a newer conversation in the patient engagement world that I think all of us have been a part of. But really, what is safe engagement, and how do we ensure that I wasn't just that lucky kid that was engaged by the right team and the right people who had the capacity to understand me as a member of the team, who already spoke to me about compensation, so I didn't have to bring it up and have an awkward conversation, who brought me onto publications and grants and to speak at conferences to the same folks that I was seeing in clinic, which again, that gave me that, as Francine said, that voice, and uplifting not just my voice, but the stories and voices of everybody in my community, or as many people as I can speak to in my community. I heard Lily speak about, the experiences of these older adults going through the program and like how profound that experience was for them. And I think that's a big part about why we do this work and why we keep coming back, even in cases where we might have actually been harmed in the research process. And I think that's not something we discuss a lot, just because it we want patient engagement to be something attractive and to feel easy to do. And I would love to encourage everybody to do it. But at the same time, it requires a lot of introspection. It requires looking at your own biases, how you're doing things. Are you having flexible meeting times so I can, meet you on a weekend if I need to, or after school if I needed to at that time? Are you giving me that opportunity to show me that my voice holds the same weight on a research team as if the principal investigator said it? My voice also held that same weight, and seeing that change being made and that cycle of feedback. So it's really interesting that Francine was saying that, she's still on that same research team, and same with Lily, because the teams that are good, you stay with. And in my case, that first researcher who brought me into the room was actually now my PhD supervisor. So in fact, that research engagement showed me so much about myself during that time. I gained such valuable skills. I gained things for my CV. It helped me reach where I am today, as a patient partner. And I think that's something important, is to understand that we are making ourselves so vulnerable, sharing the most difficult parts of our experiences, things that I'm sure nobody else would want to talk about, let alone publicly. And I remember being like a teenage girl having to speak about pelvic pain and, urinary retention. And that was something that I found incredibly, it felt like bearing my heart to folks. And I was trusting that the people around me could keep me safe while I did that. And unfortunately, sometimes they can't, because you are in a public situation. You're in rooms where not everybody is at the same place in their journey of patient engagement and understanding the value of lived experience. So, I think that's why, I'm still a part of the Family Advisory Network with Francine, and I probably won't leave. Uh, and again, it's those experiences that really shape who we are. And I'm really proud to say, we have patient partners that I've known, that have, started at the same time as me, who we're still friends, and in fact are still engaged in our research and our work. So, understanding that, that door once opened is a lifelong connection for us. And telling us things about you and your vulnerability helps us show up vulnerably as well.
I want to pick up on a word that you just mentioned in your response, Vina, and the word that stood out, it's important for us to tackle a little bit further, is trust. Like, trust is incredibly foundational to doing this work intently and meaningfully when, proceeding in patient, family, or community engagement. Like, it's such, I can't emphasize how much, or how much, importance lays on building that out when working together with research teams. So I'd like to ask the group, what have researchers done to help foster that sense of trust and showing that your voice really mattered when it came to the research itself? Lily, I thought maybe I would ask you this question first. I'm quite curious, based on your experience, what this looks like.
Um, that's question 3, right?
Question 4.
Oh, oh, you skip one question. Okay. Um, did well, did they value my feedback and when I make changes to things? Because when they first have a caring bear or calming bear, they have a seal, which is long, as it's not easy to hug. So we suggest to have a size of a bear, which is soft and huggable, and it vibrates inside. So the pulsation is similar to the heartbeat. So people can carry it in front of them with the backpack when they travel. So it's not so obvious they are carrying a toy. And they could feel the pulsation, and that calm them down when they're in anxiety, uh, going to the doctor or something. And the speed of the vibration matters too. If it's too fast, the people feel kind of excited. If too slow, people kind of fall to sleep. So it have to be kind of coincide with the heartbeat. So they listen to our suggestion to make all those changes. So we got a nice little bear now
I
with
think
the rucksack.
I think that's incredible, Lily, of all the different projects you shared with me when we met together to talk about today's session. This was the one that stood out for me that I thought was such an innovative project. It was so simple in addressing a need, and yet the way you described how value was added based on your feedback and others around like the softness of the teddy bear, making sure it's huggable, that synced vibration of the heartbeat. I thought, how great, of a way to be involved in a project and to see your input be implemented right away into something that would then be circulated to others who would benefit from this, product. So I'm glad that you felt in that instance that your value was taken seriously, that it was valued, and that you received one yourself as like a takeaway from being involved in the project. I think that's incredible. Francine, I thought I would also pass this to you because we have had many conversations about trust in working relations with researchers. If you wanted to kind of share a little bit about your perspective with those on the call today.
Yeah, I think, like Lily said, seeing the outcome of your input is great, and it's, a first step in building that trust. But I think even before you get to seeing the outcome, I like it when researchers challenge me because it means that they're truly engaging with my feedback. It's not just about, I think we should do this, and they go, okay, thank you, I noted it down, and I'll see what we can do. I want them to really engage with, and when I say, I think we should do this, and they say, well, great, but what if the only option is between A and B? You know, what is it that you would take from your opinion, your input, and integrate it into the system that we have? Our system is full of constraints, but our patients are unaware of what all those constraints are. We have budgetary constraints, HR constraints, how long we can keep someone on staff, how few staff we actually have, how long fundings last, how short fundings are. That's not always visible to our patient and family advisors. And when we just ask them for their input, walk away, and then have discussions in a back room, we're not giving them the respect to say, yes, but that won't work in our system of constraints. Or yes, that will work, but work with me. Let's expand on it. Let's talk about it. Let's give me more detail. Those very surface levels, I listened. Thank you very much. I'm going to go off and deal with it myself. Doesn't build my trust that you're taking my information, my insights, my vulnerability, like Vina said, and really handling it with care. Handling it with care to me is pushing back a little bit with me, diving deeper a little bit with me, holding my hand as we get it to the finish line together. Those are the little things that build trust and allow me to hold on to partnering with you until we get to the finish line and you can show me that finalized bear. You can show me that finalized, publication or infographic or report or pamphlet that goes out to patients. You have to hold my hand, engage with me, push me a little bit, dive deeper with me, and really work alongside of me to build my trust.
You've started tap. Oh, Vina, yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that, or maybe uh, I think that feedback is so important and just touch on something very quickly. I think what actually, like from my experience and Francine, I don't know if this holds true for you as well, but it's also that ability to have a disagreement and move forward from there. So it's not necessarily even like the pushing back. Like sometimes we can have, there are lots of times, again, as patients, we're not visible of everything on the researcher end, but or clinician end, but also as researchers and clinician, you're not aware of everything that's happening on our end and potential ways that we have innovation and strategies. Because honestly, like people, like children, youth, the caregivers, parents, some of the most innovative people in figuring out solutions for things that don't exist for us. So I think for me, something that is really, hearing Lily in that process, like pushing back a bit and saying like, no, you can't hug that seal, it's not the right thing, or the vibration isn't correct. Being comfortable to push back with the research team on these decisions and hold my own and not feel alone in it or isolated. And that's also why it's so important having more than one patient partner on a project. Um, you know, I think sometimes that trust element comes from those conversations and transparency that's involved in that, telling me your deadlines. If you can't compensate me, that's okay sometimes. Like I am willing to go uncompensated to do the work. Not that that's right, but in this current system we have, we're working together to figure out how we can move forward together. So yeah, I think just going off of what Francine said, and it just occurred to me, thinking about on the flip side, as a patient, when we push back, how that goes in a research room, and that also dictates whether or not I come back and building trust with me in that space. Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Priscilla.
Of
Can
course.
I just
Actually,
build on
yeah,
that a little bit, Priscilla, and maybe move us into kind of the next
yeah.
set of questions? But I think one of the most challenging things I have as a patient partner before I was in the system myself was understanding the silos we were working within. Because as patients, I like to say that we live at the intersection of where hospitals, home, school, birthday parties, the shopping mall all intersect. And not everyone has that perspective of where all those things intersect. Mostly are researchers who are trying to research in these, constructed scopes of where their research is. And one of the frustrating things that I find as when I started as a patient partner is like, but why can't we research this extension of this scope? Because this is where it matters to me. Um, why can't we fix this connection between A and B? Even though I know you're just an A, I want you to connect to B because that's what matters to me. So figuring out where the scope is and then figuring out where our perspective is one of the most challenging things as a patient partner. And as a researcher now, I see the other side of it, where I need to kind of rein in a little bit to say, I called you into this project because of your lived experience with this. I understand there are challenges we can't fix. Our research question is in this specifically, but let's talk about how we can build to get you to where you want to go as well, which is a bigger system problem. So that balance on either side of the table is a challenge. And it's a challenge I think that we're trying to get better at solving as we break down some of these silos.
Agreed. And this is actually a great segue to probably what many folks on this call are burning to know a little bit more about, myself included, is chatting a little bit more about that trickiness in working with researchers. Like there's a little bit of a balance that goes alongside it. Vina, you did an excellent job kind of highlighting this pushback of researchers to think more critically about your positionality, your experience, and what that means within the space of that particular project. I'm thinking we're at probably a good point that folks on the call have heard quite a bit about the work that you lead and some of this grappling and complexity when it comes to engagement, that we can start inviting some questions from them into this space. So I'm going to pass it over to our co-moderator, Kim, so that she can help facilitate that new aspect of the conversation in today's session. And we'll continue weaving in some of these additional questions that we've also come prepared to discuss under this umbrella session. So take it away, Kim.
Great. Thank you, Priscilla. And thank you so much to all our panelists. That was just so interesting and valuable to hear your experiences. So if anybody would like to type a question, I'm happy to read it out. We'll just give you a minute, maybe perhaps to formulate your thoughts and put them in. And then Priscilla, can people also, if they raise their hands, well, am I able to unmute them and then they can ask directly? Is that right? Yeah. Okay. So also, if you'd like to raise a hand, or so you can speak directly, that's also, we can also do that. And then maybe while we're just any hands there, I don't think yet, right? No. Okay. While we're just waiting for people to come up with questions, I think I'll just maybe follow up with what something related to what Priscilla had just been asking about possible challenges and overcoming them. Um, and ask, if when in partnering with a research team and in your experience, you ever encountered a moment where you maybe felt, a pit in your stomach or an uncomfortable feeling in your interactions. And if anybody has experienced that, if you could tell us what was it that happened and what advice you may give based on that experience. So is there anybody who would like to go first in answering that question? Tina? That would be great.
Awesome. Thanks, Kim, for meeting. So I think for me, just out of some of the things we spoke about was but sometimes it's tricky about working with researchers. And now as a student, I understand the way these deadlines are and the call for things are, but is that like time crunch, right? Of like we need something now, we need it immediately, I need you to set up a CAHR account, I need a PIN, I need this, I need, a CV from you. And realizing, me as someone with lived experience, I am juggling a lot of other things, including my health. And sometimes I need like longer than 24 hours to get something together. And it's really important to continue to build that relationship so that if you do get those calls, I can have some of those materials ready to go for calls like that. Like it's not saying that that's not possible, but it's often very difficult. And another thing I think I struggle a lot with, I grew up in a single income home, and a lot of that income was spent on additional treatments for me that weren't covered by OHIP or sorry, the Ontario Health Plan or any other insurance or things like that. So we paid out of pocket. And sometimes that meant I didn't have the newest phone, or I didn't have a subscription to Microsoft Word, or I didn't have a laptop in my experience. And that has been that asking for that support to say I don't have access to these things or I don't have these things. Again, that's a really big place of vulnerability. And it's really difficult, again, to ask for the things that you might need, including compensation for your time. If you have to take time off work or time away or transit money, money for printing, because that's not free. So, things like that that are just like, I know, we a lot of times in our day to day, we don't recognize that our patients are doing something on their cell phone and that's their only access to their technology. And maybe it's a few generations out of date. And, they're trying their best to engage with us. But it's really important that we ensure we have difficult conversations about things like access to technology, about things like subscriptions or figuring out alternate ways to do things. And a big thing I think Francine and I are very passionate about this is including all voices in research, including nonverbal voices. So having technology to support that and them as well. So I think those are some of the things that in my opinion, have been tricky, but I can let the other panelists touch on that as well.
Francine or Lily, did you want to add anything?
Maybe I'll jump in. An experience that actually happened quite recently. And it's funny sometimes because I wonder if engaging with people who don't know what I do for a living and don't know who I am exposes me to things that I might not others see if they knew who I was. But it was an engagement where I was really pushed back and I felt like I didn't know enough to contribute. So they really kind of dismissed any ideas in that you don't get it. You don't understand. We're doing it this way because this is the way that it's done. And it wasn't that they dismissed me, it was how they dismissed me without engaging me or supporting me to better understand why they thought. I still to this day don't know why they didn't engage with that feedback. But the worst part about it was afterwards, no one else reached out. It was one person in the meeting that kind of pushed back, but no one else reached out afterwards to say, hey, that seemed a little tense. You okay? No one else reached out to say, what is it you were really trying to get across? Because I don't think that person was listening, but I can go talk to them again afterwards. The only person that did reach out was the other patient advisor on the call. And they reached out immediately going, whoa, what happened? You okay? So it's the idea that we might not know it all, but respect us enough to tell us what we don't know.
Yeah.
And that will alleviate the pit in my stomach. That's a capacity, in our jargony term, we call it capacity building. Don't just worry about your fellows, your students, your grad students for capacity building. Think about your advisors, how they can grow, become better, become really involved in the work because they're intimately aware of the challenges you're facing together. That's what alleviates the pit in my stomach. And then follow up. Just make sure everyone's okay. It is a very vulnerable space. It is really hard to speak up. And I work in this space, and it's hard for me to speak up sometimes because when you're pushed back down, it conditions you not to speak up again. And oftentimes, like Vina said, we still keep on showing up, even though we're dismissed, because we're afraid that if we don't show up, no other patient partner is going to show up and there'll be no other voice. So just check in and make sure we're
Yeah,
okay.
that's great advice and about the importance of taking the time to properly explain reasons and checking in. Those are really great points. Well, we do have some questions now from the audience. So to start with, Lisa is wondering if any of you have any book recommendations that you found especially inspiring or that capture the values of meaningful engagement really well.
I don't know if the others do, but I just on my desk right now, Sue Robbins' book. She's got a couple of books out there about the lived experience of patient engagement and then the lived experience of sharing your voice in patient advocacy. So, oh, where is it? Oh, it's not on my desk right now. But if you look up Sue Robbins, like the bird, you will find a couple of books that are really inspiring around patient engagement, really based in storytelling. And then the other one is just stories from Victor Moriarty about the patient revolution. And all it shows is the stories and value of listening to patients and families. It's a little more academic in its reading, but it shows you that there is value in the experiences that patients have.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Vina and Lily, any other books? Lily's saying no. Vina, did you have one? Oh, I think you're on mute.
You might have to be unmuted.
Oh, is it?
Thank you. Sorry, I
Oh,
don't know. We have to be invited to unmute. I think one of the things that I personally have really found is like All About Love by Bell Hooks. It's I know it's not necessarily like speaking about patient engagement, but it really speaks about how we should navigate this world, especially for people living in a body experiencing multiple identities and intersectionality. I think is a huge thing that I think hopefully a lot of folks should look into. So there's a lot of great books by like Patricia Hill Collins and things like that that you can look into that help with that. And I also find I think a lot of times it's easy to fall into the academic mindset of I'm going to look at books, I'm going to look at publications and things like that. But the best thing more than anything is to speak to your community, speak to the folks that you're in community with, and learn from them what is meaningful engagement. For me, as like, a type A teenager who wanted, to like, to do exactly what I'm doing today. Things to build my CV were really, really important, and that was meaningful to me. It was meaningful to me before surgery when I would get an email from them saying, I wish you luck. I'm thinking of you. And a check-in email literally like 8 weeks later, how are you? Is there anything we can do on our end to support you? Things like that, like just being in community with folks, is really, really key to doing this work well. And sometimes that means it takes time and energy and weekends and, volunteering with that community. But I really think the key thing is different communities, different age groups, different folks have different things that bring meaningful engagement to them. And something we're working on in my research is creating kind of an agreement at the beginning of these experiences where we can really outline kind of what you can expect from us as a research team. And some of those things involve, support, like just, we're here if you're having a bad day and you need to talk to somebody and you're frustrated. Those things go beyond anything I think you can capture in a book is hearing those lived experiences from those folks or even online, tuning into the disability community discourse. Sue Robbins, incredibly vocal on LinkedIn and Instagram and all the other platforms. And I think following folks like Dawn Richards, Isabel Jordan, those are two of my really great mentors and friends in this area. I feel like a lot of times, again, it's about being in community together.
That's great. Thank you so much. Okay, so there's a follow-up question here in response to something, Vina, that you said in a comment about institutional and agency barriers. So this particular case acts in accessing software. So this audience member is saying that they've received some pushback from onboarding lived experience partners for their councils in terms for the getting institutional email. So how can we try to bridge the gap when we face institutional barriers? And I think you also touched on some of these barriers from granting agencies, how they expect these lived experience partners to come up with these complicated CVs and create, have CHR pins and all these sort of institutional things that create obstacles. So do you have any suggestions on, to follow up on that about what we might be able to do to change that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, this is something that we worked on quite a bit at SickKids. Originally when the advisory kind of first started, you had to be onboarded as a volunteer, you had to have a police check, you had to do the health check, you had to do kind of everything a staff would do. However, I'm not on site, I'm not a staff member, I'm not required to kind of need or do any of those things. So something that I try to do, if it's data or something like that, I think one of the best ways is screen sharing together and like going through the data together. If they have access to a monitor big enough for screen sharing, sometimes that's not the case. So it's better to send, one-page infographic or something like that to communicate whatever you're trying to ask. So I guess one of the things is questioning why you might need an institutional email, and from there, questioning how we can decolonize some of these methods to eliminate barriers. Because I know, for example, I am in community with some Indigenous folks who refuse to get a police check, as is their right. So, it's really important to, be aware of all that around us so that we can bring in as many diverse folks as possible. And we're not seeing the typical, white, primarily able-bodied, female engaging or assigned female at birth engaging in this kind of work. So, yeah, that's just kind of where I or something I think of. But Francine actually ran a lot of consultation, so I might flip it over to her to kind of address some of the things we heard.
I'll agree with you 1,000% for you to ask the question why you need an institutional email. Is it to make your life easier in terms of sharing documents and access to things, or is it making their lives easier? because as someone who probably has about 6 different email addresses, having to log on again to another one. And I can tell you, I was a family advisor here at SickKids for quite a few years before I came on as staff. And I logged onto my email for the first day and realized I had 3 years of emails that I'd never checked because no one told me I had an institutional email because I'd been onboarded as a fan member. So even if you get it, will they check it? Is it a burden for them to check it? Those sorts of things. So first ask why. Is it for me or for them? Secondly, look for your community because if you are having institutional challenges, my guess is there are others in the institution that are having the exact same challenges. So look for the community that is having the same challenges. Find the person that can advance it for you. We established here at SickKids the Office of Engagement specifically to tackle those institutional challenges. So one of the major institutional challenges we've had here is how do we actually pay family advisors? How do we get them the honorariums? And it wasn't about guidance from CIHR or the number of networks that have given the amounts and all that. That wasn't the institutional challenge. The institutional challenge was like, where do I log on? What account is it coming out of? What's the accounting code for it? All those things I don't expect, but we were individual teams to be trying to tackle those challenges. So look for others, find the people at the institution that are here to support you to do good engagement and see if they can help you or take on the challenge of addressing and finding a resolution to that institutional challenge because more voices, more community saying this is a challenge will get you to the resolution that you need.
That's great advice. Thank you. Lily, did you have anything to add about institutional challenges that you may have faced? Oh, I think you're on mute. I think I've asked.
There should.
There you go.
Well, I don't find any challenges because they're quite accommodating for me. I guess being the oldest in the research team, I learn
Yeah,
more from the young one than they learn from me.
that's great. Yeah, so the lab that you're part of helps you. They have provide that support. Yeah, that's great. So then the next question, and this may be the last one. I see we're coming close to 11, and it's a good one to end on, is what do you find both the most and the least rewarding about engaging in research? So Lily, maybe we could start with you. Is there something in particular that you have found from your experience that's the most rewarding about engaging in research?
Um, I find I find that during the TV study research, we have partnered with a senior TV from Seattle company, and we make actually films of living skill for the people in long-term care. Especially during COVID, we did a drinking water in Chinese for the Chinese long-term care. So whenever they turn that on, people, the resident will start drinking the same time I'm drinking. So that way, the nurse don't have to stand there and to watch them and encourage them to drink because they kind of do the same motion. And they also did some on brushing teeth, which is not published yet. Brushing teeth and combing hair and showering, all the living skill. I find
Oh,
that
that's
very
great.
rewarding in as culture sensitive too, because it's all in
Yeah.
Chinese.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it's an example where your participation is having a really meaningful impact. So yeah, that's really great. And then I guess likewise, is there anything that you have found particularly challenging or unpleasant about the participating in research that you'd want to share?
Uh, for me, I think my writing is not the best of my skill. So I need more help because I'm not technical savvy.
Yeah,
So I
fair
need
enough.
a lot of help from that. And the students are all very willing to help.
Oh, that's great. Sounds like a
They
great
all they all call me
partnership.
grandma. So
Oh, that's great. Sounds like a really mutually beneficial partnership. That's great. And Francine or Avina, did you have anything you wanted to share about what you find most rewarding or least rewarding?
I think for me, you know, this has been one of the most rewarding experiences of, my life. And I don't say that lightly. It's given me a community, it's given me purpose, it's given me strength and courage, and it's helped me feel powerful in a system where I often have felt disempowered. So I think, we've highlighted some of the problems, some of the ways we can address things, and I think the main thing is don't feel discouraged. It doesn't have to be perfect. I think a lot of times we put pressure on ourselves to feel perfect as researchers, but there is no example of perfect engagement. The best way forward is meaningful, real, respectful. And that's kind of, for me, what really can make or break these engagement. It doesn't matter the study, it doesn't matter who I'm working with. If those core factors are there, I often feel so happy that I spent my very few kernels of energy being vulnerable and showing up for my community.
Great, thank you. Francine, did you want to add anything?
I'll just say the people, the relationships, the friendships, knowing that there are people out there that you can relate to, support, that they can support you when you're down. And I speak of researchers, I speak of students, I speak of fellow advisors all around. That is what I take away from this. Venus says, it brings me to community. You're so right. I smile when I see Venus' face because she's one of the first people that I connected with early on in my engagement time as well. And we may not see each other for a bit, but when we do, there's a connection. And I have that with researchers as well. And I have that with, students that I've mentored in this space as well. So think of the person first. Think of the potential relationships you can have. Don't think about the project. Think about the long game and what the magical stuff you can do together when you build on a foundation that's strong.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I think we are unfortunately out of time. I apologize if we didn't get to your question. And I just wanted to thank our panelists, Lily, Vina, Francine. It was just wonderful and really beneficial to hear everything that you shared. The Toronto Leong Center's next Trainee Hub event will be in January 27th at noon, and it's titled Building Authentic Partnerships with Patient and Community Partners, Cultivating Communities to Engage in Research. So make sure you look out for announcements for that. They'll be shared in the January newsletter. And then I just wanted to also thank everybody for attending and for your wonderful questions. It was just such a great session.